You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody. Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail dream. Have you ever dreamt of hiking the AT? Bruce Matson did, so we're going to follow him every step of the way. Hi, and thanks once more for catching up with us again in Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail dream, sponsored by our friends at Trailtopia Adventure Foods. I'm afraid that I'm starting the show today with a bit of an apology. I've been having a few technical recording issues recently and having to resort to kind of makeshift recording arrangements. This doesn't always happen, but when it does, it throws me right through a loop. My guest, in this case, Bruce, has to wait while I do whatever I can to record them. This week, we couldn't do anything other than balance an external speaker from my phone on a pile of books and effectively speak into the same microphone. As it happens, it doesn't sound too bad, but I'm working on a permanent solution, so please bear with me. Before we get on to Bruce, however, let's take a moment and indulge ourselves in a little bit of Trailtopia sweetness. Do you remember those times on the trail when you really needed to treat yourself? You know, those days when you fall in the mud or the rain starts running down your neck, the rocks are driving you crazy, or even when you're just fed up. You need a boost. When that happens, stop hiking. Take off your pack and treat yourself to one of Trailtopia's scrumptious desserts. Why not go for Rocky Road pudding, a rich chocolate pudding loaded with mini marshmallows and toasted slivered almonds. By the time you get that into your system, you're going to be warm, toasty and satisfied. Try Trailtopia Adventure Food, the best of home cooking away from home. By Saturday morning, Bruce and I hadn't caught up, so when we did, there was plenty to chat about, including long overdue wildlife sightings, the halfway point of the trail, the rocks, and of course, the ridiculous half-gallon challenge. Here, as ever, is a buoyant Bruce. Right, we're on with Bruce again, and this is the first time this week, and it's Saturday, so we haven't spoken to you for a week. So how are you, Bruce?
Doing well.
Are you? You still sound chipper, which is fantastic. And I'm actually going to start it. I know lots has happened this week, and I want to talk about those things in a minute. But one I remember, because I put it at the top of my list, I've got a question from Annie, I think it's Chavent, Chavent. It might be Annie Chavent.
It's actually Annie Chavent. She's a dear friend of Brooks.
Oh, how cool is that? Okay, well,
and just to annotate a little bit, we'll talk about coming through Maryland to this week. But she was really trying to come out and see me, and we kind of are. I got a little past her before we knew it, but that's fun that Annie sent a question in.
Oh, cool. Well, funny enough, she talks about distractions as well. So I've got a question for Bruce. He mentioned early on that he would be bringing items to play podcasts, read books, etc. I'm wondering what he's been listening to and or reading, or if, now that he's well on his way on the trail, he's finding that he prefers to go without distractions instead. And I think that's a really interesting question, because I know some people think, having too much technology with you can ruin the sound of the forest. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, really good question. So kind of multi-phased answer. With respect to, say, music and podcasts on the trail, it's imperative that I listen to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail every week. And
quite right, by the way. Quite right, yeah.
I just thought I'd get that little, plug in for. But I have listened to, of course, our podcast to keep up with them.
Yeah.
And there's one other one I've listened to a little bit. I really like Malcolm Gladwell, who does a show called Revisionist History.
Yeah, excellent.
And I do listen to some music. And when I was home, my grandmother's family comes from Scotland, and I've done a lot of genealogy work. I'm really fascinated by the Scottish heritage and how that mixes with the Irish heritage, and how that's part of the Celtic heritage. And I actually downloaded a great course. If you're not familiar, there's a company that produces great courses on about anything you can think of. And I actually have a course called The Celtic World. And I started to listen to, there's 25 lectures by a college professor. So occasionally I listen to things on the trail, and I think it's somewhat controversial in terms of taking you away from the forest, the sounds of the forest, the natural experience. My counter argument would be I'm out there a long time every day, and I limit my external listening to something like 20%. Some days none, a few days I might do 20, 30, 40%, but it's usually a limited amount. Occasionally it's motivational. If I'm getting into a big climb, I might put on, I have a playlist on my phone that are the 8 songs that you and I talked about many weeks ago.
Excellent.
So I think you can have it both ways. I know some people think it's, sacrilege to interfere with the natural environment. But if there's one thing that's been clear by this week particularly, is that while the Appalachian Trail offers from time to time really great wilderness experiences, it's not solely a wilderness experience. And nothing could be more obvious to me. And then I made this sort of revelation myself this week, because when you leave Harper's Ferry and you go into Maryland and Pennsylvania, you are constantly crossing and near roads. You listen to road noise. You're much closer to civilization. You go through state park after state park after state park. There have been lots of day hikers, and it's just a completely different experience. And I don't think it's a negative experience, but it just reminds me that the AT offers a series of different experiences as you move through it from one end to the other.
No question.
So I am listening to some things from time to time. With respect to reading and writing, I haven't read anything actually, but I do still have my iPad. I still journal every day to try to keep track of what happens each day, because the days do run together.
Yes.
I do write a weekly blog for the website. And as I've indicated, I'm actually working on some material for actually a couple of books. I don't know if they'll ever become real, but I'm enjoying, as I indicated in an earlier podcast, I am actually using some of my mind time to think about not just reflections on the trail and life, but I'm also working on a novel.
Cool. Not about the trail, I hope.
No. It's the only type of novel I ever thought I could write, and I just determined once in my life to see if I actually could write a novel. It's kind of a John Grisham legal thriller, being a lawyer.
Oh, surprise! Surprise! Surprise!
Yeah, I mean, it's the only thing I got some natural material to work with.
Yeah. So what do you think about do you think it's a distraction, though, from the trail? I found that when I started plugging in too long, it would be a distraction. So I tried to balance it during the day. I listened for 2 or 3 hours, then I would take my earplugs out so I could listen to the trail. And I love the sounds of being on the trail, don't you? Oh, yeah. And that's kind of what I meant by my 20%. I never do it all day, never do it even half a day. But occasionally it's motivational. Occasionally it's just a distraction, something different. So, but I couldn't agree more that I love the sounds of the trail. And I don't think I've ever listened to anything until late morning or midday. I just, when I first start the hike every day, I always enjoy sort of absorbing yourself into the environment and the hike and getting on with the day. Yeah. Now, actually, that leads quite nicely into distractions, because you didn't want to be distracted when you saw your very first bear, did you? Tell us about the first bear, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it was really fun. And then it was a little anxious. So I'm taking my tent down. It's still in Maryland at the shelter area called Raven Rock. Mm-hmm. And just looking out into the woods, folding up my tent, and all of a sudden, this bear is kind of lumbering right at me. I mean, right at me. And it is a big bear. I'm not trying to overemphasize things, but I've seen a lot of videos and different things about bears. this bear is bigger than me. I think this bear is 350 pounds, 400 pounds. It is a big bear. And so on the one hand, I'm going, wow, this is cool. I get to see my first bear.
Yeah.
And now it's 20 yards away.
Oh my
and gosh. I'm thinking, if it sees me and it's still coming, we got a problem.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping.
Well, actually, you got the problem. You got the problem. The bear's got no problem at all.
So I just yelled out. I said, "Hey, you!" And the bear stopped. Picked up its head, looked at me, and just sort of very quietly turned and sulked away.
Oh.
Walked a few steps, stopped, took another look at me. But I couldn't. I had my hands full of the tent, and I couldn't get my phone out quick enough to get a picture. And he kind of headed off into the woods. But it was fun. It was finally get to see a bear, and it was quite a large one.
Was it? Did you notice a quickening of your heart rate?
Didn't have it monitored at the same, but I think yes, because it was like initially it was excitement to see it, and then I realized he's actually coming straight towards me. I think he was coming into the campground, the camping area,
right.
And my guess is that people had left some food there, and he'd been successful in the past, getting some snacks. Was
anybody else around at the time?
No, there were other people in the tenting area, but I was, as it turns out, I took this site that was sort of the farthest from the shelter. It wasn't that far, but I was on the fringe, so no one was between me and the bear or even nearby.
Wow, very cool. Great to see. I tell you what, one thing I really, really noticed, Bruce, it was when you eventually go to the New York Zoo somewhere, near Bear Mountain, you see the black bears in the compound there. And they're all brown and dirty and lethargic. This was a bear in the wild, and don't they look fantastic?
It was great. I mean, I've never been worried about the bears like a lot of people. And this probably, I don't know what made me think of this. Well, the bears did, but we had so many day hikers. Of course, I hiked through Maryland in the Memorial Day weekend into Pennsylvania. And there was lots of people out there, day hikers, weekend hikers. But I hope this doesn't come out sounding too arrogant, but the number of people who had these bear bells and these bear whistles was just humorous. And I'm thinking the last place in the world anyone's going to see a bear is, at Annapolis Rocks when there's 100 people around looking at the view. But yeah, I've never been, as some people have been, overly concerned about the bears. I've always believed that bears didn't want anything to do with us. So they are magnificent, and I haven't really been worried about them. I thought I knew what to do if we saw them. So I'm really excited that I got a chance to see one like that in the wild.
Very cool indeed. And by the way, still no snakes?
No, I got 3 snakes.
Oh, wow.
One pretty good-sized garter, a tiny garter, and then a pretty good-sized black snake that, was right across the trail. And in an area where the vegetation is so thick, it was really hard to get around it.
Wow.
But, they're certainly out, and you're hearing a lot of reports.
Very cool.
Black snakes and rattlesnakes.
Now, I believe you're in Boiling Springs now, aren't you?
That's right.
Isn't that a pretty, pretty town? Absolutely gorgeous.
I love the town. Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so you came in, I'm trying to think, you're coming across the fields, don't you, yesterday? You've had some fairly flat hiking, which is kind of nice sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, yesterday was probably 60% very modest and flat. But before you get into those fields, there's a pretty good climb and some rock scramble, 2/3 the way into the day. And then you come down off of Cedar Knob into the fields. And I'm going to tell you, normally I like walking on soft, flat ground, but a mile and a half through the fields in the sun yesterday was really warm.
I would imagine, and funnily enough, that's actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you about. And I knew you were coming across the fields and so on. I know what it's like. It's incredibly exposed, because one of the great benefits of the Green Tunnel, which is what I guess you're now in with all the leaves in the woods now, is that you are covered, or you're at least protected from the sun a lot of the day. So what's the main difference to you from hiking in the heat as opposed to hiking in the cold? Because you're now into the heat, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely into the heat. Keep hoping, praying, begging that we actually get some spring and the weather moderates. we've had pretty much a solid week of, hot, humid weather with thunderstorms threatening every afternoon. And being in the tunnel, there is a shade that makes a sort of what I would call a modest hike pretty pleasant, more pleasant than I expected.
Uh-huh.
But whenever you're climbing, I am a complete sweaty mess. And it takes a while to cool down. And, if we went back to the early days of this podcast, one of the reasons I left early was to hike in the cold rather than heat.
Yeah.
And to this day, I'd much rather hike in 30-degree weather than 80-degree weather or even 70-degree weather. So it's challenging. You're a mess. You're stopping to wipe yourself down when you can. Just, wet the bandana and sort of wet myself down at the creeks and try to cool down.
Yeah.
If there's anything positive is while it's not as pleasant and it isn't quite as challenging as I thought, and the heat hasn't seemed to beat me up too much from a fatigue standpoint.
Cool.
I've continued to do some reasonable distances. Yesterday was 19 miles, so I think I've got the strength to do the hiking, and I just have to deal with the heat. And so far, it hasn't been too bad. I don't really love the heat, and I've had only good news. I've only had one night where it was pretty miserable sleeping because of the heat and humidity.
Oh, that's not too bad then. Because when it gets really hot and humid in the middle of the night, oh my God, there's nothing you can do. It's awful. So you're out of Virginia now. And I don't know whether listeners know that Virginia is about a quarter of the entire trail. So, which is quite a landmark when you get out of Virginia. Can you reflect upon what the Virginia Blues is all about? Do you understand the concept? Because for you, of course, Virginia was great because you where your family, where you are, where you live. Or did you understand? Do you understand now what the Virginia Blues are?
Yeah, you and I talked briefly about this. I think I always thought the Virginia Blues were the newness of the trail is worn off, and it's a little bit of a monotony and doing the same thing each day. You thought you added to that the idea that you weren't like clicking off a milestone because you're in the same state for so long. I guess in some sense those are related. I think for me, when I hit the Shenandoahs, I reflected on the Virginia Blues. I said, the Shenandoahs was a good sort of intro to what's going on now, and reminding me that different miles of the trail are going to be a different experience.
Absolutely.
And if you just embrace the experiences being offered, I think you're going to have a great time. And instead of some people who may be, wilderness ninnies and are lamenting the fact that the Skyline Drive is nearby and these day hikers are so rude to interrupt their tranquility, and just embrace the fact that the Shenandoahs are different. They've got these great trails. They've got beautiful views. They've got these, just enjoy what's being offered, the campgrounds, the wayside, and just take it all as it comes. And to me, the Shenandoahs was a great fun. I had a good buddy came out and spent 5 days with me. We got to enjoy the waysides. We had great trails. We had great views. And so to me, where the blues might have sort of hit me, I had a great distraction because I had friends come out and hike with me. I had friends come out and take me to dinner.
Yeah.
But I think everybody who does Virginia can embrace the different experiences and use the fun and the newness and the difference of, like the Shenandoah, to kind of chase the blues away because they're embracing a new experience. And to the extent that the blues involve monotony and sameness, there's this lack of sameness, particularly when you hit Waynesboro and start moving to the Shenandoah.
Definitely. I think that's a really good answer. And I totally agree with that. It's, I never really felt it. It's just, I think there's definitely an impetus thing, though. Once you get out of Virginia, get out of West Virginia, get out of Maryland, you are moving on. Your states are knocking off. And for me, that was really a great thing. I wasn't down about being in Virginia. In fact, I wasn't down at all. It was just that the lovely thing of crossing a state line every time was a real thrill to me. Every single time. I loved it. How are you enjoying it so far in Pennsylvania? Because the rocks haven't really hit you yet, and because the rocks out of Duncannon are really the rude awakening. And I remember that very, very well. And the climb up out of Duncannon after crossing the Susquehanna River hit me around the face like a wet towel. I tell you, it took me ages to get used to those flipping.
Yeah,
rocks.
well, I have been, probably stressing about the rocks more than I should, and. But so far, as you indicate, the trails actually have been quite nice.
Yeah.
Lots of packed earth,
yes.
pine needles places. We've had rocks here and there. We've had some rock scrambles, but if the rest of Pennsylvania was like the first few days, it would be wonderful.
Yes, it ain't.
The climbs haven't been that challenging. A couple have been challenging. The climb up the Raven Rock, I guess that's actually at the end of Maryland. So we've had a few rocks to deal with, but nothing like I understand is coming.
Yeah.
And I've been really trying to get myself mentally prepared because I don't like it when I do get into stretches of rocks, and I don't like the fact that rattlesnakes are hiding behind these rocks.
I never saw a single snake. Not a single snake in Pennsylvania. Not one.
Good. Some of my buddies up ahead have been texting me saying there's lots and lots of rattlesnakes. So, but it's kind of like any challenge in life. Me and my planning, I've been trying to come up with a mental strategy so I don't let it get me down, and I just get through it.
Yeah.
Figure out the best way to get through it, and hopefully not just get through it, enjoy it. So, So I've got 25 miles to get to Duncannon, and I'm doing 16 today and 9 on Sunday.
Right.
And 9, you may not recall, but at least on AWOL, there's a 6-mile stretch of heavy rocks before Duncannon. And I feel like that's going to be my first test. So, part of my strategy was let's have a short day so I don't have any motivation to move too quickly and potentially hurt myself because I'm frustrated or moving in a way that could cause me to slip. So
yeah,
I'm going to do an easy day on Sunday. I'm going to get sort of my first taste of a lot of rocks, assuming the AWOL's right. And then my thought was I'm going to go at these rocks at a 60% pace until I'm comfortable that I know how to move through them. But if I feel like if I'm trying to push myself to do an 18-mile day through difficult rocks,
you won't.
I'm going to hurt myself. I'm going to go too quick.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be, and even if I can move quickly through them, I'm probably going to be frustrated by the amount of hours that I'm in the rocks. So I'm trying to think through how can I do it in a way that gets them behind me and maximizes the opportunity to enjoy that part of the hike. Well,
it's definitely a challenge, Bruce, but you know what? I found it a very, I wouldn't say intellectual challenge at all, but more of a challenge to find out the correct route through the rocks. It's almost like you had to pick your way through them. And I kind of love that part of it for the first 60 or 70 miles. Then it got kind of exhausting after that with the rocks. I know that coming out down into Duncannon, yes, I seem to recall it was a little bit rocky. That's where I got lost as well. I went all the way down the mountain before I realised I'd gone the wrong way. So I had to go back up again to take the right White Blaze. I just totally missed a White Blaze. You want to watch out with the path when you're on the way down there. And the other thing I was going to say, actually, you just mentioned the path in Maryland particularly, and early parts of Pennsylvania. It's a beautiful springiness, don't you think so? I recall that very, very well, how wonderfully springy the earth was you were walking on. Then you get out onto roads and you suddenly feel like your feet have been assaulted by the harshness of the roads when you go back into this lovely springy path in Maryland and early Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it definitely was nice. It was also very notable how wide the trail was. It just seems like that part of the AT gets a lot of use.
Yes.
and the trail's remarkably wide. And of course, I was going through there during Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And it was a busy time. And but nice trails. Maryland is not quite the breeze that everyone said. There weren't too many climbs, but Maryland had its own way as you were leaving to remind you that, they can be tough too, because you might recall there's a really tough climb up to Raven Rock where I saw my bear, a really tough climb. And then as you leave Raven Rock, you go down through a really, really tough area of rocks that not only is it a tough area of rocks, but you're descending as you're going through them. And I was actually walking with a guy named Loner who's 77 years old, and he's on his 4th through hike.
Oh, wow.
And we were kind of talking through the middle of that, although he made a point of saying, it's not good to talk to someone while you're going through these rocks, which is probably good advice.
Yeah,
if you talk to me long enough to say, just so you know, there's nothing in Pennsylvania that's harder than this. So Maryland did have its parting goodbye to remind us that Maryland could pack a punch too if it wanted to.
Oh, definitely, most definitely, yes. There's certain areas. I think it's just the longevity, as it were, of the rocks in Pennsylvania. They do seem to be endless some days, but that is part of the challenge. As you say, you've got to embrace every part of this challenge, and it's really a wonderful thing to do. Now, last thing I want to talk about now that I had in my list of things to ask you was the one of the trail traditions, the half-gallon challenge, and I've noticed it's mainly the silly old fools like you and me who take on the half-gallon challenge. Tell everybody about that, Bruce.
Sure. Yes, I've known about it for quite some time with all my preparation. Yeah. And when you get to a place called Pine Grove Furnace, and it's just a little bit, literally 2 or 3 miles past the actual halfway point. And, of course, the halfway point changes every year because the AT is always rerouting part of the trail. But this year it was probably 4 or 5 miles after the actual technical halfway. Right. But you come into Pine Grove Furnace, which has the AT Museum there. It's another one of the states that a lot of these state parks you walk through is part of Maryland and Pennsylvania. But the general store there has, since 1980, had this thing called the half-gallon challenge. So you're halfway through the trip north, and you celebrate the halfway by eating a half-gallon of ice cream in one sitting. Actually, a brilliant marketing move.
Oh, totally.
I actually asked the lady in the store, how many half gallons did they sell a day? And things are getting busy now, and so this is it's a busy time, but it's not. The bubble hasn't quite gotten to Pine Grove Furnace. And she said 30 or 40 a day, and that will double when the bubble gets up to. Wow. So it's a lot of half gallons. So there's a lot of challenges and traditions out on the trail. I decided I would not jump off the James River footbridge into the James River when I came through Glasgow, but I thought I should partake in this. As I put on my Instagram post, this is doctor's orders. I'm losing too much weight, so this was actually medicinal for me to eat a half a gallon.
Quite right, too.
But I was able to do it. It wasn't as hard as I thought. I didn't feel as uncomfortable as I thought. I was certainly full. My strategy was I picked the vanilla chocolate strawberry half gallon, so I would have some variety as I was eating that quantity. And I was awarded with a tiny wooden spoon that says half-gallon challenge on it. So it was fun. It's funny how you stop for a few hours like we did, and because there's all these people ahead and behind you, and when you stop, there was 20 hikers came in behind me that most of whom I'd never seen and might never have seen because of hiking. So it was a lot of fun. Everybody seems to stop. Most everybody tries to do the challenge. And one of the treats for me, and you've asked me about this, there's a family of 8 hiking this year. It's made a lot of news.
Crawfords.
It's the Crawford family. 6 children, mother and father. And as I went through the Shenandoahs, a lot of people I was hiking with said, and even before the Shenandoahs, people I was hiking with said, the Crawfords will be here tonight, meaning at the place where we were camping. Yeah. And for whatever reason, they never showed up, even though these people had seen the Crawfords and had been camped with them and were pretty sure. So I was always within a half a day of the Crawfords for like 3 weeks, but I never saw them. Well, the night before Pine Grove Furnace and the half-gallon challenge, they actually came into the campsite, but they also marched out the last 4 miles, and they actually camped at Pine Grove Furnace. But the end of the story is that they came in and did the half-gallon. They didn't do the half-gallon challenge, but they were there with us while we were doing the half-gallon challenge. And the Crawfords actually filmed me. I don't know if it'll show up on their video. Filmed me doing the half-gallon challenge and sort of what was my strategy to get through it. And I had a chance to visit with the family and take a photo. They let me take a picture of the family. So, when I look back, hopefully I'll finish this hike. And you look back on 2018, my year of through hike, one of the notable stories will be the Crawfords, of course. And at least I've had my encounter with them. And, it was fun to see the children, to visit with them some. And they didn't do the challenge, but the family was able to share 3 half-gallons among themselves.
How long did it take you, by the way? I was 27 minutes.
It took me 51 minutes.
Oh, blimey. But you know what? It's steady and slow is probably the best way. I must admit, after the 20, I was struggling for about I got through the first 3/4 of the ice cream in about 5 minutes. I thought, this is easy. And then I hit the wall. I finished about 15 minutes later.
Yeah, there's an 18-year-old sitting next to me and who attacked it before I did. He finished in like 17 minutes. And I go, I can't believe that. I said, that must be a record. And when I was asking the woman about the volume, I said, is there a speed record? And the speed record is a little over 8 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Damn it. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you about that, did you actually speak to the Crawfords, ask them if they would interview with me? So I asked you to do that.
I didn't. I thought about it. I'm sorry I didn't. It didn't feel right.
That's fine.
As
no
we
problems.
were talking, and he asked me to take a picture of their family, and I probably will see them again, and I'll look for the opportunity. Okay. It just didn't feel right.
That's fine. I understand.
It seemed forced, and You can understand.
Absolutely, of course I can. Yeah. No, actually, there was one other quick question, because you mentioned you've gone halfway. You passed the halfway mark. I must admit that was a much bigger deal for me than I expected it to be when I got there, because I remember going across the halfway line, just standing 1 yard beyond it, saying Katahdin for the first time is nearer to me than Springer, and it felt so as it was a transition in the hike. I'm not terribly sure how I can express it better than it being a transition hike. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, maybe not that dramatic, but I've had a few moments. There's been 4 moments. One was coming to Damascus, one was crossing the 1,000 miles, one was coming into Harper's Ferry, and one was crossing the halfway point. And obviously, those last 3 were relatively close in time, but they're momentous enough that they cause me to stop and think. And while you're always saying, "Hey, we're getting there," I've had this almost silly, exciting sense of disbelief that I've actually gotten this far, and it's more just rewarding and fun. I'm almost, like I said, it's almost disbelief that I've gone over 470 miles, and then I've gone over 1,000 miles, and now I'm over halfway. And it is fun. And I was talking to a buddy while we were doing the half-gallon challenge. And I said, my next moment of, wow, this is amazing, is I'm really looking forward to the day when the number of miles left to go becomes three digits.
Yes, I remember that as well. Oh dear, these little milestones are worth celebrating, though, aren't they? And that half-gallon challenge is a lovely tradition to have, and I'm kind of really glad you did. But the other overwhelming feeling when I crossed the halfway point was, I've got to do it all over again. On tougher terrain as well. So, this is what you're preparing for, though. You're preparing for these tougher terrains. You're going to get them, obviously, in New Hampshire and Pennsylvania and Maine, but you're going to be ready for them because you'll have so many miles on your feet already.
I hope so. I think so. I'm optimistic. And as we talked, I'm trying to be a little less driven by my schedule. And if I take it slow and deal with these mental challenges in a way, like I suggested, by just going a little slower, I think I'll get through it, and it'll take on whatever the next challenge is.
Yeah. Well, very, very cool. Great catch up, Bruce. Really lovely to hear all these things. And I recall Boiling Springs as a very, very beautiful, beautiful little village. And it's a great place to have breakfast there. It's like a Starbucks moment for me in there. Where are you camping? Are you staying somewhere, or are you in the camp just outside of town?
Yeah, everyone told me to stay away from that camp. Because the train goes by so frequently, and
it does. Sounded like it was coming through my tent.
so in Boiling Springs, actually treating myself at the Allenberry Resort.
Very nice too. Very nice. Well, you have a great time, mate, and enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll catch up again early next week. Okay.
Okay. Hey, good, Steve. Good
cheers, Bruce.
Take care.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
He's seen a bear at last and some snakes. At that time, I thought he might be the first person ever to go through the Main with no major wildlife to his name. Believe me though, when you're lucky enough to see a bear in the wild, you can hardly equate it to the listless, almost lifeless creatures that you see lumbering around zoos. In the forest, I was immediately struck by the vitality and the sleekness of their coats. I know zoos can be great and they do some fantastic work, yet they take so much from the animals, and the argument to keep them seems really thin to me. Thanks, of course, to Annie. I'm not even going to attempt her last name again for her question. Make sure that you send me your address, Annie, and we'll get a couple of yummy Trailtopia meals to you. We've got another 5-star review on iTunes this week, the first review we've had for some time. JB, Maine, says, I look forward to the podcast every Monday morning. JB goes on to say, as a section hiker in Maine, I'm looking forward to hearing Bruce's experience as he heads north. Thanks, JB. So am I. While Bruce has been in Pennsylvania for several miles, it is only after the climb up out of Duncannon that he will start to encounter the full panoply of problems presented by the rocks. There's a lot more alliteration there than I was expecting. In retrospect, while I'm pretty sure I hated them at the time, the rocks present you with a soul-sapping challenge that invades your consciousness and gnaws at your determination. This is a test, though Bruce has prepared so well that I'm sure he's up to it. I'll tell you what, though, we'll find out a whole lot more next time. Bruce and I will see you next week.